The bridegroom's bargain. Deep in the mountains, where the forest grew so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground, there stood an old, forgotten mansion on a hill. The villagers below never spoke its name after dark. They called it simply the house that waits. This is the story of the night Ahmed and Zara spent inside it. Ahmed and Zara had been married only 3 weeks. They were driving to a hill station for their honeymoon, a small white car winding along a narrow mountain road, laughing at nothing in particular the way new couples do. Zara had her feet up on the dashboard, her dupatta trailing out the half-open window, and Ahmed kept glancing at her instead of the road, because even after 3 weeks he could not quite believe his luck. People in their village said Zara was the most beautiful girl anyone had seen in a generation, skin like fresh cream, eyes like wet stone, a laugh that made strangers turn their heads. Ahmed believed every word of it. It was that distraction, perhaps, that made him miss the turning. By the time he noticed, the paved road had become gravel, and the gravel had become a rutted forest track, and the trees had closed in so tightly overhead that the afternoon light dimmed to a kind of green twilight. The GPS on Zara's phone spun uselessly, searching for a signal that never came. "We should turn back," Zara said, though not with any real fear yet, just the practical worry of someone who does not want to be late. "There's nowhere to turn," Ahmed admitted. The track had narrowed until the branches scraped both sides of the car. They drove another 20 minutes, deeper into the trees, until the engine coughed, sputtered, and died. Ahmed tried the ignition again and again. Nothing. Not even the dashboard lights. Outside, the forest had gone very quiet. No birds. No wind. Only the tick of the cooling engine. "It's getting dark," Zara said, and now there was a thread of worry in her voice. They stepped out of the car together, and that was when they saw it, through a gap in the trees, on the crest of the hill above them, a great dark shape against the darkening sky. A mansion. Old, sprawling, with pointed rooftops and dozens of black windows that caught the last light like open eyes. "There," Ahmed said, relief flooding his chest. "Someone lives there. We can ask for help, maybe use a phone." Zara looked at the house for a long moment before answering. She did not know why, but looking at it made something cold move through her stomach. "I don't like it," she said quietly. "It's just an old house, Jan," Ahmed said, taking her hand. "Better than sleeping in a dead car in the middle of a forest. Come on." And because she trusted him, and because the sky was already bruising toward night, Zara let him lead her up the winding path toward the hill. The house that waits. The mansion was larger than it had looked from below, 3 stories of grey stone, its walls thick with ivy that seemed less like a living plant and more like something that had grown to hold the house together, or perhaps to hold something inside it. Broken statues lined the overgrown garden, their faces worn smooth by rain and time, and the front doors, twice the height of a man, stood slightly ajar, as though someone had left them open in expectation of guests. "Hello," Ahmed called, pushing the door wider. It groaned on old hinges. "Is anyone home? Our car has broken down." No answer came, only the echo of his own voice rolling away down a long dark hallway. They stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and something else beneath it, something old and sweet, like flowers left too long in a closed room. A grand staircase curved up into darkness. Faded portraits hung along the walls, their painted eyes seeming, in the gloom, to follow the young couple as they passed. "There's no electricity," Zara whispered, though she wasn't sure why she was whispering. Ahmed found an old brass oil lamp on a side table and, by some miracle, a box of matches beside it. When he lit the wick, the flame caught at once, as though it had been waiting. "See," he said, trying to sound brave for her sake. "We'll just wait here till morning. Someone will pass on the road eventually, or the phone signal will come back. It's just one night." They chose a room on the ground floor, a large parlor with a stone fireplace and 2 dusheet couches, because it was close to the front door and because, unspoken between them, neither wanted to explore the upper floors after dark. Ahmed built a small fire from broken furniture, and for a while, in the flickering orange light, the house felt almost ordinary, almost safe. Zara fell asleep first, her head against Ahmed's shoulder, exhaustion finally winning over unease. Ahmed stayed awake a little longer, watching the fire, and that was when he first heard it, a sound like breathing, slow and deep, coming from somewhere above them. Not wind. Not the settling of old wood. Breathing. He told himself he had imagined it, and eventually, sleep took him too. The Watcher. Zara woke in the deep hours of the night, though she could not have said why. The fire had burned down to embers. Ahmed slept soundly beside her, one arm still curled protectively around her shoulders. Something had woken her. A feeling, more than a sound, the unmistakable sensation of being looked at. She opened her eyes slowly and saw, standing in the doorway of the parlor, a tall shape. It was not a person. It was too tall for that, its head nearly brushing the top of the doorframe, its shoulders too broad, its shape somehow both solid and smoke-thin at once, shifting at the edges like a reflection in disturbed water. Two eyes glowed faintly in the dark, the color of dying coals, and they were fixed on her, only her. Zara did not scream. Some old instinct, some voice from her grandmother's warnings about the things that lived in old, forgotten houses, told her that screaming would be the worst thing she could do. She lay perfectly still, her heart slamming against her ribs, and watched the shape watch her. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, impossibly, she heard a voice, not spoken aloud, but somehow inside her own skull, deep and resonant, like a voice heard underwater. "So beautiful," it said. "After 300 years in this dead house, I did not think anything beautiful would ever walk through that door again." Zara's breath caught. The shape in the doorway seemed to lean closer, though its feet, if it had feet, never moved. "Sleep, little bride," the voice whispered. "I will not harm you tonight. I only wanted to see your face." And then, like smoke drawn back through a keyhole, the shape was gone. Zara did not sleep again that night. She sat with her back against the cold stone of the fireplace, watching the doorway until the first grey light of dawn crept through the shuttered windows, and only then did she finally close her eyes. What the old woman said. When Ahmed woke, he found Zara pale and trembling, dark circles under her eyes, staring fixedly at the doorway. "We have to leave," she said, the moment his eyes opened. "Now. Right now." He tried to reassure her, but when she described what she had seen, the tall shape, the glowing eyes, the voice that spoke without a mouth, his own blood ran cold, because he too remembered the sound of breathing he had heard before sleep took him. They gathered their things quickly and hurried out into the pale morning light, down the winding path, back toward the car only to find the engine still dead, the battery drained beyond any hope of restarting, no matter how many times Ahmed turned the key. It was while they stood beside the useless car, arguing about whether to walk back the way they had come, that an old woman appeared on the forest track, leading a goat on a rope. She was small and bent, her face a map of wrinkles, her eyes sharp and searching. She looked at the mansion on the hill, then at the young couple, and her expression changed, not to surprise, but to a kind of grim recognition, as though she had seen this exact scene play out before. "You slept in the house," she said. "It was not a question. We had no choice," Ahmed said. "Our car broke down." The old woman shook her head slowly. "Cars break down on this road more often than you would believe, Beta. The house calls them. It has been empty of guests for many years since the last time it took one." "Took one?" Zara asked, though she already feared the answer. "A jinn lives in that house," the old woman said, her voice dropping though there was no one else to hear. "An old and powerful one, bound to this hill long before my grandmother's time. They say he was once a prince among his kind, cast out and cursed to remain in that house until he could win the heart of a mortal woman of true beauty, not just face, but soul. For 300 years he has waited, and every girl unlucky enough to spend a night under that roof, if she was beautiful enough to catch his eye." She trailed off, looking at Zara with something like pity. "What happens to her?" Zara whispered. "She does not come out again," the old woman said simply. "Or if she does, she is not herself anymore. Something else wears her face." Ahmed felt Zara's hand tighten around his. "Did he speak to you last night?" the old woman asked Zara directly. Zara nodded, unable to find her voice. "Then you have until sunset," the old woman said grimly. "He will not take you by force on the first night, that is not his way. He wants to be chosen, cursed pride that it is. But when the sun sets tonight, if you are still within these woods, he will come for you again, and this time he will not simply watch." "How do we stop him?" Ahmed demanded. "Tell us, please, I'm begging you, she's my wife. We were only married 3 weeks ago." The old woman studied them both for a long moment, then sighed, an old sound heavy with old sorrow. "There is a way," she said. "But it is not easy, and it is not safe. Iron, salt, and the verse." The old woman's name was Bibi Rashidin, and she had lived at the edge of this forest for 60 years, long enough to have seen 3 other couples wander into the house on the hill, and only one of them, she said, walk out whole. She led Ahmed and Zara to her small hut, gave them water and plain bread, and told them what needed to be done. "The jinn's power in that house is old but not limitless," she said. "It feeds on fear and on the silence between people. It cannot easily cross a threshold marked with iron, and it cannot bear the sound of true prayer spoken without doubt in the heart. But most of all, a jinn like this, a prideful one who wishes to be chosen rather than to simply steal, he can be refused. Openly, directly, without fear in the voice. That refusal is a wound to one such as him. But you must both be brave enough to face him together, for if either of you flees, he will take that as weakness, and weakness invites him closer." She gave them a small pouch of coarse salt, an old iron key blackened with age, and taught Zara a verse to recite, not as a spell, she was careful to say, but as a sincere prayer, the Ayatul al-Kursi, which she said no dark thing could stand against if spoken with a truly steady heart. "You must go back tonight," Bibi Rashidin said, and when Ahmed began to protest, she cut him off. "Your car will not start until you do. He is holding it, the way a spider holds a web waiting for the fly to try to leave. If you try to walk out through the forest instead, you will only walk in circles until dark finds you anyway, and in the open forest, with no walls and no doorways, you will have far less protection than inside that house's own threshold. Go back. Face him honestly. Refuse him with your whole heart, together. That is the only door out I have ever seen work." Zara's hands were shaking as she took the pouch of salt. "And if we fail?" The old woman did not answer that question. She only pressed the iron key into Ahmed's palm and closed his fingers around it. "Do not let go of each other's hands," she said. "Not for one moment, no matter what you see, no matter what voice calls to either of you in a shape you love. That is the second thing he will try, to separate you, to make you believe the other has already been lost. Do not believe it. Whatever pulls at your hand in the dark, hold on tighter. Return to the hill." The walk back up to the mansion felt longer than it had the day before. The sun was already sliding toward the western trees by the time they reached the great doors, still standing open as though the house itself were smiling. Ahmed had lined the threshold of the parlor with a thin trail of salt, as instructed, and tucked the iron key into his shirt pocket, close to his heart. Zara held tightly to his hand, repeating the verse under her breath, over and over, until the words felt less like something borrowed and more like something that belonged to her. They sat together as darkness fell, the small fire lit again, and waited. The breathing sound came first, just as it had the night before, slow, deep, from somewhere above. Then the temperature in the room dropped so sharply that their breath began to fog in the firelight. The flames themselves bent sideways, as though a great weight was moving through the air toward them, though no wind stirred the dust on the floor. And then he was there, in the doorway, taller than before, his smoke-dark shape filling the frame from side to side, his coal-red eyes fixed once more on Zara's face. "You came back," the voice said, and this time there was something like delight in it. "I did not expect that. Most flee. Most never return. We came back to tell you no," Ahmed said, and though his voice shook, he did not let go of Zara's hand, and he did not look away. The eyes turned to him, and the room grew colder still. "The husband speaks," the voice said, amused, contemptuous. 300 years I have waited in this dead house for a face like hers. You think your small human no means anything to me? It's not just my no," Zara said, and her voice, though thin, did not break. "It's mine too. I am not yours. I never will be. Whatever curse bound you here, whatever pride keeps you waiting for someone to choose you, I choose him." She squeezed Ahmed's hand so hard it hurt. "Only him. Every night, for the rest of my life, I choose him. Not you. Not ever you." The shape in the doorway recoiled as though struck. The fire guttered violently, plunging the room into near darkness but for the dim red glow of those terrible eyes, which now seemed to flicker with something like pain. "You dare," the voice began, and then it changed, not one voice now but two, three, a chorus of whispers layering over one another, each one taking a different shape of sound. Ahmed's own voice, pleading, "Zara, let go of my hand, run, save yourself, leave me," and beside it, in Zara's own voice, a whisper aimed at Ahmed, "He already has me, it's too late, let go, save yourself," a cruel mimicry meant to pry their fingers apart. Zara's hand trembled in Ahmed's grip. For one terrible heartbeat, doubt flickered across both their faces. But Ahmed remembered the old woman's warning, and he held on tighter, and through gritted teeth he said, "That's not her voice. I know her voice. And I am not letting go." Zara, hearing the false whisper meant to sound like her own husband begging her to abandon him, felt something inside her go very still and very certain. "That's not him," she said, louder now, steadier. "I know my husband. And I am not letting go either." She began to recite the verse the old woman had taught her, not in a whisper this time, but clearly, firmly, each word deliberate, her hand locked in Ahmed's, the small pouch of salt clutched tight in her other fist. Ahmed, though he did not know the words as well as she did, spoke what he could remember of it alongside her, their two voices joining, unsteady but unbroken. The shape in the doorway began to shudder, its smoke-dark edges fraying like cloth pulled too thin, the chorus of false voices dissolving into a single furious howl that seemed to come from everywhere in the house at once, from the walls, from the floor, from the black windows above. "No one has ever refused me twice," the true voice roared, and the fire in the hearth exploded upward in a column of green flame before dying instantly to cold ash and darkness. And then, silence.